Okay, grade 10. So we're going to do a little bit of review from grade 9, and it's going to be finding or solving missing angles. So we'll start with that, and then later this week we'll get into finding missing sides and solving the whole triangle. So finding missing angles of right triangles. Okay, so if we do an example, and don't panic, like I said, it's right out of grade 9. Let's get a triangle here. Let's call it A, B, and C. And if the question says find the missing angle B, let's go for B first. And the information below says, okay, I don't know, 14, and let's give the hypotenuse here a 20. Okay, so from grade 9, we've got some steps, so we can write the steps out. I'll try and slow down for you, but here we go. Step 1. You've got to be able to label the triangle and name all the sides and all that stuff. So just a refresher, remember the side opposite the angle is the lowercase letter. So the side opposite of little b has a label of little b. The side opposite of the big uppercase C is little c. And the side opposite the uppercase A is little a. And that always is the case. The next thing, when you're using trig ratios, not Pythagoras, but trig ratios, your step 1 will always be to name sides from the important angle. And if you went back to your grade 9 notes right now, the steps will be the same. So name the sides from the important angle. And in this case, and in all cases, I always consider the important angle either the one you're trying to find, so in this case, angle B, or whatever angle you have. So again, you don't have any other angle, because remember the 90-degree angle is useless. The only purpose it actually stands or has is to tell us where the hypotenuse is. That's it. The right angle, that's its only job. So you can't use that. So from there, let's name all our sides from our important angle. So from angle B, our important guy, we're going to think about this. So we can label our hypotenuse, because by now we should know where the hypotenuse is forever and always. Let's change this up here. Let's go to red. So the side across from the angle that we're talking about, which is B, we're going to call the opposite side. Now, obviously, little a is beside our angle, so we'll call it our adjacent. And you'll see in the next example, those can change depending on what angle, because you can imagine if we started from angle A, if angle A is what we were looking for, our little a would be our opposite, and our little b would be our adjacent. Okay, so step 2. So name sides from the important angle. Step 2, figure out what trig ratio to use. Okay, so back to grade 9. We know our trig ratios are sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Our cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan equals opposite over adjacent. So some people would say, oh, that's SOHCAHTOA. That's students of HAPNOT can always help teachers on assignments, and that's obviously the best one. But those of you who like to remember weird sounds like SOHCAHTOA, go ahead. So looking at our triangle, let's see here. We got opposite. Definitely, we have the opposite. Right there. That's the one we have, which is 14. And we have the hypotenuse, which is 20. I don't have adjacent, so I can't use that trig ratio. So the trig ratio that uses opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So I'll write that out. Sine of angle B equals opposite over the hypotenuse. So the sine of angle B equals 14 over 20. Alrighty. I guess we should put step 3 down here. Substitute values. Substitute values. Step 4. When finding an angle, remember that special button on our calculators that we have to hit is a second function button. So we'll say substitute values and solve. And we'll put in brackets, remember second function button. Because only when you're looking for an angle do you use the second function button, right? So we pump that into our calculator and we get the sine of B equals 0.7. And if I'm to grab my calculator, making sure your calculator is always in degree mode because you don't actually use any other mode. So if you look at the top, it'll have a D or a DEG or something of that form. If it says rad or grad on it, you've got to figure out how to change it. So we punch 0.7 into our calculator, second function sine to get rid of the sine. So I'm going to show second functioning like this, the -1 beside it. And we get angle B, angle B equals 44.4 degrees. There's our solution right there. Okay? So you can see now there's a couple things. You got to be able to name all your sides, opposite and hypotenuse and adjacent. If you don't have that, you're going to be lost. You don't have to memorize the trig ratios, but it's nice because then you don't have to be looking back all the time. If you can't memorize them or you can't remember them, write them at the top all the time so you've got access to it. What else here? Remember your calculator's got to be in degree mode. And if you're finding an angle, you got a second function. So let's do another example. I hope that's sort of clear as mud for you. I know it's a little bit difficult, but let's do another one. Let's go and do a question like this. Say our right angle's there. Let's call this angle P, Q, and R just to show you it doesn't matter at all. And let's find angle P this time. If this is 13 and this side here is 12. Let's go with that one. So find angle P. Now if I knew all three sides, it really doesn't matter, but in this case, I'll switch colors here for you so you can see this again. My hypotenuse in this case is really useless because I don't have any information about it. It's a big question mark, right? It's nothing. We don't really care about it at all, so ignore it. It means nothing to us, okay? But we know that the side opposite or across from the angle we're talking about is the opposite because it's step 1 says name the important sides from the important angle. And the side that's beside it is called our adjacent. So I have to look back at our trig ratios, so SOHCAHTOA or whatever you want to call it, and figure out which trig ratio uses the opposite and the adjacent side. Well, when I look back or on the test, look at my notes, I see that the tan of P uses opposite over adjacent. I hate that color blue, so I got to switch back to black. That's just... Anyways, so the tan of P is opposite over adjacent. Step 2, substitute our values, or sorry, step let's figure out which trig ratio. We did that. Step 3 is substitute our values. So the tan of angle P equals 12 is my opposite over the adjacent, which is 13. So now I've got to pump that into my calculator because it says solve, remembering the second function button. So I got a second function that, second function that. And the reason I use the -1, remember, if you look at your calculator and you go to the second row of buttons, so to speak, it'll have above sine, it'll have sine with a little -1, and you'll learn later that that just stands for the inverse function, but that's totally out in left field for right now. So a second function, 12 divided by 13, tan, and I get 42.7 degrees. Like so. So some of you are going to struggle trying to figure out how to use your calculator. So on The reverse calculators, you would have to put 12 divided by 13 equals, and then second function tan. That's the kind of calculator I like. Other people, even though they can do 12 divided by 13, then second function tan, they'd have to put the answer in. They can do it by going second function tan first, then put in the 12 divided by 13, close the bracket, and hit equals. So you've got to figure out your calculator. If you can figure out the 42.7, great. If you can't and you're struggling with it, ask your neighbor, because they'll be able to figure out, or somebody will be able to help you, Mr. Garinger or Mr. Domenko. Let's go here. Let's do an example, another one. Let's go with a real awkward one. Let's go name our angles A, B, C again. Okay, and let's find, on this one, find angle, it doesn't matter, A. All right, so let's put all three sides on. No, let's not do all three sides. Let's do 4 and 15, like this. Let's do those two sides. All right, so if I'm going to name my sides from my important angle, what's my important angle? Well, it says find angle A, so that's my important angle. So I'm going to mark angle A, and I'm going to name my sides. Well, I know this is the hypotenuse, right there, the 15. And I know that 4 is beside angle A, so that must be my adjacent. And of course, the side across from it, or the opposite, is useless at this point because there's no information there anyways. So we could name it if we wanted to, and if we had a number there, we could use that one. But in this case, we don't. So I have to figure out what trig ratio to use now. Which trig ratio uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Happens to be cos, I believe, right? So cos of angle A equals adjacent over the hypotenuse. Substitute the values. When I substitute the values in, I get cos of A equals 4 over 15. And last step says solve, remembering the second function. So we're going to second function cos. And angle A equals 74.5 degrees. So it works every time. Remember, your calculator's got to be in degree mode. You got to be able to name the sides again. Other than that, you should be golden.